financially, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
Marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug in the United States. Dangerous drug.
It is clear, however, that if left unchecked, Saddam Hussein will continue to increase his capacity to wage biological and chemical warfare and will keep trying to develop nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons.
Being a pro-war pundit means never having to say you're sorry.
William Crystal led the march to Baghdad behind a battery of Washington microphones. He has not responded to any of our requests for an interview, but he still shows up on TV as an expert.
He's got to begin to show progress in 3, 4, 5 months once the U.S. troops get in.
The Times liberal hawk Thomas Friedman also said no.
We're not trying to show you propaganda. We're just showing you what is. We're just showing you what is.
Citizens of the internet, it's a lovely Friday afternoon if you're on the East Coast. 9 a.m. if you're over where I am. And a lot of stuff going on this week. I should change the name of this show to the whenever the fuck I feel like it show because I definitely am not getting on almost daily. But I am at least trying to post content regularly. I went back and posted some of these clips from the Bill Maher Matt Gaetz interview, and I also today, you're gonna be proud of me, I added some new sound drops. So here's one.
First of all, you're wrong.
Isn't that great?
First of all, you're wrong.
And then of course this one.
That's insulting.
But by far my favorite is this one of Candace Owens talking about Eminem.
Ew, you disgust me. Okay. Ew, you disgust me. Okay.
So anyway, let's get things started. Today's theme or general theme is the brunchlib paradigm, which let me to explain what I mean by this, because it's going to be lost on some people, and I'm going to kind of explain to you where it comes from. There is a mentality specifically on the left in the Bernie movement to view things that are happening within the MAGA world or the current administration through this lens, through the lens of brunch liberals who have basically ruined everything and turned the Democratic Party into this.
Now, President Trump says he likes the idea of giving some of the savings from Doge back to Americans as kind of a dividend. Would you support that?
Listen, he's just telling a lie. He's not the one that had anything to do with the $1,200 refunds that people had during the midst of COVID that was done by a Democratic House and Democratic Senate. Right now, what they're going to do is say, hey, we want to give.
That's an interesting claim there, because I don't know if you remember this or not. Both John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock were brought into office on the promise of checks that no one ever got.
You a refund, but Congress won't let us because they already know that there's just no money for that. The only reason that those refunds came before was because we were living.
They already know that there's just no money for that. Now, I don't know if she's been paying attention, but they have been finding a lot of waste. For example, say what you want about Elon Musk, the fact that there are several 100,000 people supposedly over the age of 150 years old receiving Social Security checks is a bit curious. And I mean, that's the tip of the iceberg, I'm sure. Now, that's not to say that Doge should cut Social Security. I don't think they're going to cut Social Security, but you always hear this argument from specifically deficit hawks like Republicans that Social Security is going to go bankrupt, that it can't be maintained under the current circumstances? Well, I think when you kind of audit it and you cut people from the roles that aren't alive anymore, there's a better chance of it being sustainable. Also, the idea that any of these government programs are unsustainable after we just watch them dump unaccounted for billions into a fake proxy war in Eastern Europe kind of deads that whole deficit hawk idea that, like, oh, we can't afford it. Yeah, you can fucking afford it, especially if it's something that taxpayers are paying into, like Social Security. That's another thing that gets lost in these, like, oh, we just can't afford it. It's like, no, fuck you. You can't afford it. It's my money. I paid into Social Security. People, taxpayers pay into Social Security through their entire lifetime of working. They should get their money. Anyway, let's keep going.
In different times. This was a time in which hopefully we won't ever go through again. We had a once in a lifetime pandemic. The bad part is that I don't know if it's once in a lifetime, because we know that Ebola unfortunately was detected right here in New York here recently. And if we continue down this road of getting rid of scientists or deciding that we don't want to rely,
the hype train is about to leave the station. The Ebola has been detected in New York. Uh-oh. We're going to get to why that's starting in just a minute.
Rely on experts as it relates to what they're telling us to do, or we don't want to deal with vaccines and medicine in this country, then we may be facing not only our next pandemic, but our next 2, 3, or 4 pandemics because of their incompetence. So no, we are not in the business of giving out money. And honestly, I don't know what $5,000 will do for you.
So that's the Democrats. That is the rising star in the Democratic Party right there, arguing against, the Trump administration, basically saying, hey, look, we found all this waste and it's enough that we can actually give you some of your money back. And the Democrats, the rising star of the Democratic Party, is out there going like, who's going to use that anyway? Who really needs that? Now, probably 5 minutes earlier, she was on Twitter going like, oh, look at the price of eggs now that Trump is president and we just killed a bunch of chickens. And this, again, is the brunch liberal paradigm. This is the lens that the world is seen through. And just to further explain this, there's never going to be a conversation about, oh, hey, what's the Trump administration actually doing to help working class people, because they're going to be busy talking about, oh, white supremacy, identity politics, I'm a fucking moron. Now, there are people on the left that are talking about this still, despite the just visible reality that this is completely garbage nonsense. And that, listen, there are points when race is relevant in conversations. And there's definitely, show me racist policies and I'll oppose them. But it's arguable that the Democrats are more racist, more white supremacist than the Republicans. And so when you start using this like race baiting argument against the Trump administration, it completely deads your class position. You just look like another fucking brunch liberal with your mimosa who completely lives in the headspace still where it's 2015 and the last 10 years didn't actually happen, where the Democrats didn't fully stomp the Bernie movements, where the Democrats didn't fully fund without any question a genocide in the Middle East, where the Trump administration didn't just come into power and put a stop to that. I don't necessarily like what Trump's vocalized plan for the future in that area is, but how did we get to the point where he has that plan? Let's not forget that. And had you voted for Joe Biden or the Democrats, brunch liberals, would any of this even be happening? Now we get to the Ukraine thing, a complete manufactured neocon war that liberals support vociferously, while out of the other side of their mouth screaming about the genocide, oh, the genocide, yeah. And the same for conservatives on the flip side. Oh, they're very concerned about the Ukraine war, but the Israel thing is fine, you know? And that's the world we live in right now. Both parties are full of shit. By the same token, one side of the coin is still having a very unserious debate here about, you know, racism or white supremacy. So just to show you how fucking awful the Democrats are, like, and the reason I'm even, you know, kind of broaching this topic here, just to kind of, you know, give you the overall thesis of my essay here. The Democratic Party has done arguably worse shit than the Republicans under the guise of, hey, at least we're the good guys when it comes to race and, you know, gender equality and all that kind of stuff. So they've been able to get away with that for the last 10 years. You know, Barack Obama was essentially the neocons cloaked in a fucking rainbow flag. You know what I mean? They did all the worst things that the Bush administration did. They protected bankers after the economy fell apart, and was ruined by those bankers. So to come out now and make a white supremacy argument against the Trump people is just, you look very stupid. But let's keep going here, because I want to show you just how pathetic and disgusting the Democratic Party has become. This is a clip from The Daily Show elevating John Bolton as some kind of a liberal hero because he's against Trump and for the Ukraine war. The Daily Show. Daily Show joins the corporate media in bootlicking. And so I say all this because now what's happening with the current, you know, change of tides and everything is you have a administration who's come in, who's actually doing things to benefit the working class and ending wars. And the pushback against them is going to be intense, and it's going to be completely fake and imagined and brunch liberal nonsense like what I'm about to show you. So CNN here, I went on to CNN today just to see, you know, where the news is going. And I wanted to give you, this is a great example of what brunch liberal paradigms are going to bring you. The brunchers. I like to shorten it to brunchers and just, you know, it's almost like QAnoners or, you know, whatever, climate deniers, any of the ERs, 9/11 truthers. Oh my God, people that are for the truth, people that want the truth. Brunchers, the brunchers. Definitely not anywhere close to the truth. But what's going on right now, if you notice the tone of the news, is a second-term Trump. It's actually a good thing that he was voted out because he had kind of time to rest on his laurels while he was being attacked by these people and plot a course through dismantling all this bullshit. Now, these white supremacists just got Kash Patel approved as the director of the FBI. And say what you want about Kash Patel, say what you want about RFK, say what you want about Tulsi Gabbard. You know, none of these people are right wingers by any stretch. And you could make the argument with, oh, well, they're Zionists. Yeah, they're all fucking Zionists. Point to someone in the Democratic Party like Bernie Sanders who isn't a fucking Zionist, okay? That argument gets dick in the dirt for me because you have to look. If Tulsi Gabbard comes out and supports something that's crazy fucking Zionist, I'll be right there opposing it. But by the same token, we'll go into I'm getting ahead of myself here. We're going to talk about Tulsi Gabbard in just a minute. But what I want to show you right now is what the fucking news media is doing. They're creating fake resistance like they did the last time Trump was elected. This time, however, he's a secret Russian thing it's not going to hold as much weight because there's no real there. And I see this because he's ending the Ukraine war and all these people are getting he actually cut the funding today. Now it's funny because, a lot of the left, I have to kind of scold people in my arena right now because again, they've fallen victim to the brunch liberal paradigm. And so when the Democrats start attacking the MAGA stuff for sometimes doing shit that's actually good, these people relish in it because they still see the world through this brunch liberal lens. And to give you an example of this, after Trump ended the Ukraine war and said, hey, we're going to have peace talks with Russia, there was a report that went out that said, oh, well, they're still sending weapons and money. Well, a bunch of the fucking leftists and the people in my world were like, oh, see, MAGA, you dummies. He didn't really, they're going to keep going. And it's like, okay, do your stupid fucking victory dance. Like, first of all, why are you celebrating that? That's fucking stupid. And second of all, eventually Trump cut funding completely and now they're not getting anything. And now they're really freaking out. And so what they're doing now is trying to seed rebellion within the MAGA movement. You see it with the egg prices thing, right? What's the first thing the Biden people did on their way out? They made sure that there was a bird flu pandemic order and they killed a bunch of chickens. So it artificially inflated the price of eggs. Honestly, I'm not feeling it that much. Eggs were already high under Biden. I pay about the same as I was paying for eggs before Trump became president. So that's not a big deal. But here's a good example of what they're doing. So I can show you some real hard evidence here. So this is an article from CNN. The White House denies plans to take control of Postal Service, which could lead to privatization and service to rural customers. And listen, that is a headline that appealed to me because I don't want them to fucking dismantle the Postal Service. Postal Service is one of the good things that the government does. So this, I was like, wow, that's fucked up. I got to see if there's any truth to this. And there's not. So here's what the article actually says when you actually read the text and don't just freak out like a brunch liberal about the headline. The Trump administration is considering steps that could give it more control over the independent U.S. Postal Service. Well, first of all, the government controls the Postal Service. So, the next administration would have that control as well. According to multiple published reports, it's a move that could upend how Americans get critical deliveries, including online purchases, prescription drugs, checks, and vote-by-mail ballots. So right there, they're kind of framing it as, oh, he's a threat to democracy, the ballots. The Washington Post has reported late Thursday, citing numerous anonymous sources, that President Donald Trump planned to disband the U.S. Postal Service's Board of Governors and place the agency under direct control of the Commerce Department and Secretary Howard Lutnick. Okay, that's not necessarily disbanding it. That's just taking a layer of bureaucracy out of the equation. The Wall Street Journal also Friday reported on the plan to dissolve the commission, citing government officials. The Postal Service did not respond to requests for comment, but a White House official denied that Trump planned to sign such an order. So, okay, let's recap that. Citing numerous anonymous sources, the Washington Post reported some shit, a rumor that is in the headline. The Postal Service didn't respond to requests for comments, so they got no response. But a White House official denied that Trump planned to sign such an order. So you have anonymous sources versus a White House official. That's the reporting that CNN's doing. What's that headline say again? White House denies plans to take control of Postal Service, which could lead to privatization and service to rural customers. So let's just examine the psychology here of this headline, right? So technically the headline isn't a lie, but it's very misleading. And so right out of the gate, they tell you the truth that's buried, the lead that's buried. The White House denies plans to take control of Postal Service. They did, in fact, do that. Because the rumors that they're going to take control of the Postal Service are coming from anonymous sources. So the second part of the headline says, which could lead to privatization and end service to rural customers. So right there, that last line is clutch because it's designed to scare the very people that support Trump in rural, zip codes or whatever. Hey, or rural postal codes. Hey, Trump's trying to take away your deliveries, rural people. That's what this article is disingenuously the picture that they're disingenuously trying to paint. Let's keep going. This is not true. No such EO is in the works, said Secretary Lutnick. Excuse me. And Secretary Lutnick is not pushing for such an EO, a White House official told CNN. So that's a actual verbatim quote from an actual White House official, again, versus anonymous sources. However, the denial from the White House was silent on the question as to whether it's interested in privatizing the service. So they're going to keep hammering their agenda item here, which is to scare people about privatization of the Postal Service, which is something Trump has voiced support for in the past. The Post reported that the governing board is taking the threat of it being disbanded seriously enough that it held an emergency meeting Thursday to retain outside counsel with instructions to sue the White House if the president were to remove members of the board or attempt to alter the agency's independent status. Now, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on how this works, but tinkering with the board of governors at the post office, which is definitely an extra layer of bureaucracy between the federal government and the post office that does not need to be there. And these cunts probably make a bunch of little money and kickbacks in some ways. And that's what's happening. These people are freaking out because they might alter the way that the fucking bureaucracy works. So let's keep going. Trump has already moved to fire other members of governing federal agencies such as the National Labor Relations Board and Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, leaving those agencies without the minimum number of members needed to act to provide protections to members of the public. Okay. What protections were these people actually providing? First of all, now the NLRB, that's an organization that I think does some good. But again, what real good has any of this shit done over the last, 20 years? The working class is in a worse state than it's ever been. And so far, I don't know if you've noticed this, but Trump has really shook up a lot of the forces that, used to prevent that. Now, of course, people are going to say, oh, he's an oligarch, he's a rich guy too. Yes, he is, but it's a different kind of dynamic here. And you're a fucking fool if you don't admit that. You're one of these people. Because the difference between Donald Trump and his people is that they're independently wealthy already outside of government. And Elon Musk doesn't need to make money in government. He's already rich. And so, again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be critical of Elon Musk and you shouldn't have a high degree of skepticism for the things that he's doing. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I've ever said. I have a high degree of skepticism of Elon Musk and Donald Trump and all these people. However, I do not view them through the brunchlib fucking lens, through the Bruncher paradigm of they're a threat to democracy. They're all white supremacists. It's fucking retarded rhetoric. I'm sorry. It's fucking stupid. It's as stupid as being mad about someone like Tulsi Gabbard being confirmed at the head of national intelligence, a person who has literally been an enemy of the fucking creeping authoritarianism of the technocratic security state because she supported Israel during the campaign. That's fucking stupid. That's junior high cafeteria level shit where you're just flipping your tray over and going, oh, I don't care that she's was smeared by Hillary Clinton as a Russian asset and now she runs the intelligence community. I don't care about that because she's a Zionist genocider like every other fucking person in modern politics, regardless of their party. Find me a Democrat that isn't fucking a Zionist that's anywhere near power. You can't. Even Bernie Sanders is fucking pro-Israel. So Sit the fuck down with all that bullshit. Anyway, let's keep going here. So the next slide here says other countries have privatized their postal services, but a plan to privatize the 250-year-old service that predates the formation of the United States could dramatically change the way Americans receive deliveries and even who they would be able to get who would be able to get service. Current law requires the USPS to deliver to all addresses, even rural ones that are too costly for a private business to serve profitably. Even many online purchases handled by private companies, such as the United Postal Service, depend upon the Postal Service to handle the last mile to delivery to homes. So again, all of this is hypothetical. It's at no point has Trump said he plans on intending to cancel the Postal Service or privatize it. They're using like these anonymous sources and previous comments that he's made out of context, like they always do, to scare people and create a backlash to real change happening in the government. And if you don't see that, I'm sorry, get back to brunch, go to drag brunch, do your thing, whatever, that's fine. There's actually real change is actually going to happen. And it's so funny that the Bernie people are so upset about the Trump movement because this was inevitable. Populism was going to rise up whether the Democrats liked it or not. And they tried to choke it out on their side, and it just popped up on the other side and beat the pants off of them because they were always catering to an elite cabal of cunts. And they're still doing that. As I just showed you with Jasmine Crockett, they're going to quadruple down on their strategy of serving elitist cunts instead of the working class. So you have to get past this idea that there's any shred of working class or, progressive credibility left in the Democratic Party. There is none. I just showed you a video of Jasmine Crockett saying, like, why would we send money? Why would we send taxpayer money back to working people? What's that going to do? I'm busy crying about January 6th and irrelevant bullshit, drag brunches, racism, white supremacy, shit that no one really cares about. And that if minority communities really thought was a big detriment to their lives, wouldn't have voted in droves for Donald Trump and the Republicans in the last election cycle. But let's keep going. In December, then President Trump-elect said privatizing the UPS is not the worst idea I've ever heard. So an out of context quote again, but that's the only legitimate words they have from him. Not the worst idea I've ever heard. Okay, that's not him saying, I'm going to privatize the post office. That's him saying it's not the worst idea I've ever. It's an idea that a lot of people have liked for a long time, Trump said at a news conference at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. We're looking at it. Trump dropped previous plans to try and privatize the service in 2018 during his first term. So I'm sure he's going to do it again. Last slide here. But it's unlikely Trump would be able to privatize the agency without congressional approval, given many federal laws that control the quasi-independent service. Among those laws is one requiring universal delivery, as well as outlawing a strike by USPS employees. That's interesting. With a 630,000 person workforce, 91% of whom are covered by union contracts, the USPS is the nation's largest unionized employer. That's an interesting typo. The USPS is the nation's largest unionized employers. I think it was supposed to say maybe one of, but maybe it is the largest. I'm not sure. That's CNN's typo. Whether those laws would remain in place in a privatized postal service is unknown. Yeah, and I don't think we should privatize the post office. I don't think that's a good thing. One of the service's major unions, the American Postal Workers Union, issued a statement blasting the idea of disbanding the Board of Governors or privatization. So maybe the Board of Governors is a good thing. Maybe it's a layer of bureaucracy that's unnecessary. let me know if you have information that I don't in the comments. I'll do some more research on that. By the same token, the point of me showing you that article is to show you that there's really no plans to do anything. It's a complete fucking scare tactic and has no merit or basis in reality whatsoever. So I think moving on to just kind of hammering home this point that I've been making about brunch liberals and how they're kind of ruining themselves, I want to show you what your boy Bernie Sanders has been up to. And I've got Nick Cruz from RBN right here laying it out for you. Take it away, Nick.
Bernie Sanders comes out as a psychotic, pro-war neocon in response to Donald Trump wanting to pursue peace with Russia. Trump derangement syndrome really broke people's brains. Bernie Sanders sounds no different than Lindsey Graham right now.
So it's interesting to note that I showed you that clip from The Daily Show a minute ago. The acronym for The Daily Show is TDS. TDS, The Daily Show and Trump derangement syndrome have the same acronyms.
Apparently, the plan that Bernie Sanders and the NATO left have to oppose Donald Trump is to flank him from his right and to advocate for never-ending war. This is exactly why Bernie Sanders, AOC, Ilhan Omar, and the entirety of the NATO left is so dangerous. Their job is to shift what it means to be a socialist to the right. Bernie Sanders fiercely defends Ukrainian fascism as Zelensky banned opposition media, opposition parties, and refuses to hold elections. What kind of socialist defends a fascist state that bans the right to collective bargaining and bans socialist parties? Just another example of how social democracy is just a moderate wing of fascism.
And again, to keep hammering on this point about brunch liberty and the brunch paradigm, the idea that the Democrats are the idea that the current MAGA movement is a white supremacist movement and not a working class movement is fucking ridiculous, especially when you look at what the other side is doing under the guise of DEI. I shouldn't say DEI because I think that's overblown and stupid, but under the guise of identity politics. And this is the point that Nick is making here. They're a fucking fascist movement. They're supporting. This morning on Twitter, I was just reading Republicans and Democrats alike, establishment Republicans and Democrats alike, trashing Trump's Ukraine war and policy and calling him a Putin puppet and all the stuff that the Bernie Sanders and the Jasmine Crockett's of the quote unquote left are on board for. And it's unserious. This whole MAGA's white supremacist. Listen, when they do something that's actually white supremacist, I'll be right there with you opposing it. But so far, I haven't seen anything white supremacist out of MAGA yet.
Zelensky in Ukraine, cracking down on democracy and cracking down on workers' rights, Bernie turns it around and claims that Putin is the tyrant.
Putin is a dictator who crushed Russia's movement toward democracy after the end of the Cold War. Russia holds sham elections every 6 years where Putin wins 90% of the vote and authorities don't even try to hide their ballot stuffing. There is no freedom of speech or free media in Putin's Russia. Protests are violently suppressed. Tens of thousands of people are in prison for protesting Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Sir, you understand that Vladimir Putin provides universal health care, paid maternity leave, and free college for his people, right? These are all policies that Bernie Sanders failed to deliver for the American people after taking over $300 million from the working class. Meanwhile, Bernie thinks he has the right to call out Putin. What makes Bernie Sanders selling out in such a blatant way even more pathetic it's for how cheap he's doing it. Bernie Sanders has no political aspirations. He's old as fuck. He's simply selling out to the establishment and advocating for never-ending war simply for the love of the game.
Simply for the love of the game. I've said this before. I used to say that the biggest political disappointment in my lifetime was Barack Obama. Bernie Sanders took that crown 1,000%. When I think of Bernie Sanders.
Ew, you disgust me. Okay. Ew, you disgust me. Okay.
So moving on from the NATO left, I want to talk again, staying on this subject of how unserious some of these debates are. I saw this interview that Due Dissidence did with Chris Hedges recently, and this is kind of what set me off on this tangent, because I love Chris Hedges and I think he's one of the best real journalists left, but he unfortunately has fallen victim to this brunch liberal paradigm where the Trump movement is white supremacist racists. And, you know, again, when they do things that are white supremacist, I'll be out there in the streets with you opposing them. I haven't seen it yet. I did see them nominate Kash Patel, an Indian man, to the director of the FBI for 10 years. I did see them nominate Tulsi Gabbard, a veteran woman of color, to the head of national intelligence. I haven't seen any white supremacist stuff yet. I'm sorry. It's just not there. It's brunch liberal rhetoric. So let me play a little bit of this, because I think these guys make some really good points too. And Keaton and Russell actually put him in check a little bit as well.
Now, they often talk about communism with Chinese features, or socialism with American features. In a country as pluralistic as America, doesn't it seem like they're developing fascism with American features, meaning you can't really do fascism without diversity in America? I mean, you could, but it would be really difficult to pull off. It seems like it's evolved to incorporate non-white people into an overall fascist ideology. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but they serve the white supremacist project the way Clarence Thomas does on the Supreme Court. So sure, they'll welcome figures like Clarence Thomas and remunerate him handsomely and probably illegally, but they have to serve that white power structure.
Right.
So, I mean, white supremacy is, and there are people who, Uncle Toms, who are happy to do it, and for their own personal advancement.
Okay, so the thing I have to ask here again is, how is Barack Obama or Lloyd Austin any different than Clarence Thomas in this situation? Because I think the mistake that Hedges is making, and again, he's a guy who he teaches in prisons, so he's not ignorant to the class struggle here, but he's steeped in this old way of thinking where, the conservatives are fascist, right-wing, white supremacists. And it's very clear that they're not. First of all, now, as I've shown you today, even a lot of the majority of the worst Republicans are Democrats now. The Daily Show is doing puff pieces on John Bolton. You know what I mean? Mitt Romney caucuses with the Democrats. What's the guy, Brett Stevens, the douchebag, that conservative at the New York Times, voted for Kamala. So the problem with this brunch liberal kind of paradigm, this bruncher paradigm, is that they still live in 2015, where the Democrats are the good, righteous, multicultural party, and the Republicans are right-wing religious fascists. Now, I do want to say, I don't think that the religious right element has completely left the Republican Party, because what's it going to do? Go to the Democrat side? Like there's no room for, that there. But the worst Republicans, the worst fascists, the neoconservative foreign policy war pigs, the Dick Cheneys, the John Boltons, the Bill Kristols, the David Frums are Democrats now. They're all Democrats. And so what you have left on the carcass of the Republican side is this weird coalition between kind of the libertarian right, the new conservative movement, which is the J.D. Vance people, the people who are against foreign wars, and the more Ron Paul-minded reformers, and then some of the kind of hangers-on from the religious right, the dying part of the party. Because Trump is not a religious right guy, as much as people want to hang that on his neck. He definitely panders to those people and Bush and blah, blah, blah. He's not that guy. I mean, he's a fucking Manhattan guy. He's from New York. He was at Studio 54 and shit. The guy is not this like racist, right-wing, conservative, religious person that people whose brains are stuck in 2015 want to pretend that he is. But let me let Hedges keep going.
And personal wealth. But yeah, I wouldn't say that just because you have a certain diversity within the structure, and having spent 2 years with the Christian right, I don't know, but anecdotally, we must be talking 95+% white. We're talking about basically a white movement. But you're right; they need that kind of cover, right, so people can't figure out that they're really the Klan.
Right.
So, do you think?
And again, it's like people forget that the party of the KKK was the Democrats originally. Now that changed. The parties shift. I did an entire fucking research piece on this process when I was a Democrat to show that, yes, in fact, a lot of the racists left the Democratic Party and went to the Republican Party after the civil rights movement. It's very documentable shit. Barry Goldwater was kind of the illustration of that shift. There was a guy named Lee Atwater who fucking, ran Reagan's campaign, who said the N-word on tape. Like, they have tape of him talking about how you use this language about busing and stuff that appeals to racists. So the Republicans definitely were the racist party for a long time. Nowadays, I think that demographic is very, very small. And sure, there are still some like right-wing religious nut jobs in the Republican Party, because like the left and the Democrats, they have nowhere to go. What are they going to do? By the same token, again, these dynamics have shifted. If you listen to J.D. Vance of 10 years ago, in my last stream about J.D. Vance, I showed this clip of Crystal Ball playing J.D. Vance from years ago when the Lincoln Project arose. Again, neo-fucking-cons siphoning liberal money by being anti-Trump. So this fascism thing becomes kind of an irrelevant, or the white supremacy, all this fucking identity politics bullshit that is still ingrained in liberals' heads. It's not the same playing field that you were on in 2015 anymore, guys. Cash Patel, an Indian man, was just confirmed to be the head of the FBI under a Republican administration. Tulsi Gabbard is not a white woman. I mean, you could argue that she's closer to a white woman than Jasmine Crockett. Okay, that's fair. But again, it's not, the Trump movement is not a white supremacist movement, and you judge it as such at your own peril.
I think Trump's inroads with, black and brown people, because he certainly made them.
So Keaton brings some actual, levity here.
Coalition in 2020 was the most diverse of any Republican since Nixon, and now in 2024 was even more.
Yeah. But that's because, look, I got lots of critiques of Bernie Sanders, but he was right about this. First, you betrayed the white working class, and then finally the black, brown working class said, we've also had enough.
Yes.
People are desperate. The desperation, that's the one thing you learn being a
people were desperate when Bernie Sanders was a thing. The difference between Trump and a Bernie Sanders, and I've said this many a time, and it's what's frustrating to me about the left as a male with a pair of testicles. The left has no balls. They're a fucking toothless movement. They will not fight for the things that they believe in. And there's no better example of that than Bernie Sanders. Every time a left movement arises in the Democratic Party, the corporate right wing of the Democratic Party stomps it, and it fucking just licks the boot and fucking, sticks to the shoe and keeps going. Whereas the Trump movement, grabbed the remnants of the skeleton of the GOP, what hadn't exited to the left to grift off liberals, and said, no, we're fucking steering this thing in our own direction now. And they're still fighting it. Like I'm showing you with this brunch liberal paradigm thing, the new thing is going to be to try and turn the people who voted for Trump against him through propaganda, like, oh, they're going to dismantle the post office. Well, no, they're not. They didn't actually ever say that. That's something we made up. And here's some anonymous sources versus someone in the White House saying, no, we're not going to do that. Anyway, let me let this these guys.
And going out to these communities that have been devastated, people are really desperate. I mean, they're working 70 hours a week to just stay afloat.
Yeah, and Chris Hedges knows this. I've heard him say before, this is why people voted for Trump, of course. But again, I think the mistake liberals are still making is they're still seeing the MAGA movement through the brunch liberal lens, through the lens of oh, it's a white supremacist, hateful threat to America movement. Oh no. Let me let him finish though.
The white working class was first and the rest of the working class followed. But that wasn't that was a gift to Trump.
I think you're right. Yeah. I mean, and now that, Trump is in power, I mean, if you use the internet as a sort of, microcosm of things, people were very offended. A lot of MAGA was very offended at that Saturday Night Live skit where Tom Hanks, as the MAGA guy, refused to shake the black host's hand. And I thought
So this is one of the points that Keaton makes that I think is very on point here, that a lot of the more conservative voices in the MAGA movement do go into that, oh, Kendrick Lamar, that does seem kind of a racist bullshit. There's a bunch of the MAGA people, the more right. So again, the more right wing religious, the Matt Walsh, or what's that guy's name? I think it's Matt Walsh. Maybe it's Matt something else. But the guy who did the What Is a Woman video. Those kind of people, those more that wing of the MAGA movement, the more because you have the fucking, Charlie Kirks and the Benny, what's that guy's name? But then you have the Tim Pools, and you have, the some of the more kind of moderate MAGA people that are not the far right. And those people, and I said this when the Kendrick Lamar thing happened, everyone, that was good art because everyone was able to pour their own political beliefs into it. It was very unspecific. Outside of having black people dressed up in red, white, and blue, dancing and shaping like American flag, I didn't see anything suggestively political about that at all. And liberals were like, wow, Kendrick Lamar really stuck it to Trump with that one. And then I saw conservatives in my feed that were like, wow, that was actually really good. There were no butts or boobs or twerking. It was just a good, wholesome kind of rap performance, good music, good dancing. So I saw that too. You know what I mean? I saw conservatives actually praising it. But, you get what you focus on. And when you live in this hyper partisan brunch liberal fucking cave, all you're going to see is the MAGA people who said racist shit about the fucking Kendrick Lamar. And they existed, and there were definitely some high level influencers in that world that said dumb racist shit about it. And it's that coalition that you have to deal with. It's much like, I think, in the Democratic Party, a lot of the right wing fucking, the Amy Klobuchar's hate that they have to deal with the Bernie Sanders movement. The difference is they're the bad people and the Bernie Sanders people are the good people. And in this case, on the right, it's kind of the reverse dynamic where it's kind of like the dumb racist types, the religious people. I think that they're kind of a minority for the most part, but it's a coalition that, like I said, it doesn't have anywhere else to go. So it's got to deal. There are so many religious people that don't like Trump because of how immoral he is. You know what I mean? I've heard it before, but they're going to deal with it because that's what you do when you want to get what you want in politics, you know? And that's the thing that I think is the most shocking about the Democrats in this cycle is that they don't see how far that they've kind of stomped the working class to the point where all these new alliances have been built. And Trump's delivering on a lot of that stuff. You know, the Ross Ulbricht pardon is a big thing that I like to point to, but let me let this clip finish out. I don't think we have to watch the whole
skit
thing.
was kind of lousy and weak, but
yeah, so let me show this too, because I'm glad that Keaton points this out, because again, this is what these people sound like to me. This is how the MAGA people view Chris Hedges when he talks about white supremacy, you know, being a staple of the Trump administration, and completely ignores the reality that it was totally the Democrats are the same people. They just pander better. They don't actually do anything to help people of color. So watch this. This is a good example of why Saturday Night Live sucks.
Now, I heard a fellow could win some money here, and I know exactly who that is, the church lady.
Yes, that is correct, Doug. Thank you. That is the church lady. $400 for you.
Oh, well, thank you.
First of all, I just want to say, you know, I'm sure Kenan Thompson is a great dude and everything, but he's been on SNL for years because he's not funny. And I didn't think he was funny when that Good Burger show, I think he was on that on Nickelodeon. I was just like, wow, this is the dumbest show I've ever seen in my life. And then he's been on Saturday Night Live now for like 20 years. And every time I see sketches with this guy, I'm like, first of all, he has no acting chops whatsoever. He's the same person in every sketch. But second of all, he's just not funny. You know, there's like some of the funniest people in the world came from Saturday Night Live or were on Saturday Night Live. Chris Rock, I think, is like one of the best comedians in the universe. But this guy, he's terrible. He's just an NPC on every level.
Speaking of church, can I say something? If more folks went to church, we wouldn't be in this mess we're in now.
You know what? I agree with you, Doug. I'd like to shake your hand, sir. Here we go.
No.
Like that. Oh, no, it's just a handshake. Yeah, it's just a handshake. Yeah, all right. You're welcome to Black Jeopardy anytime.
All right. Well, thank you, my brother. Maybe I'll start a show for you to come on, and we'll call it White Jeopardy.
Like, that might as well be a sketch written by Chris Hedges' staff, because that's how he comes off with the stuff that he's saying in this piece.
But, you know, at the same time, I'm thinking, yeah, I mean, it was kind of libby, but at the same time, if you don't want to be portrayed that way, do you have to have a meltdown about the Kendrick Lamar halftime show? Like, did you have to get DEI halftime show trending for 12 hours after a very innocuous, I thought fairly benign and middle of the road halftime show? Like, yeah. They do seem to just lean into white identity politics, frankly, full board. That seems to be the entire movement right now.
Argument over South Africa from
right,
the 80s.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but let's be clear. First of all, these people are not particularly
a very good point
educated.
that Keaton and Russ are making too, and MAGA should take note of that. Like, don't play into this trope that is not, you know, clearly not real. Because the reality of the situation, the reality of the political reality is this, and has been this for a very long time. Free Navalny. That's the wrong slide. I was looking for this one. That's some fucking lib propaganda. The Democratic plane with the Black Lives Matter and rainbow flags. So I want to show you one last thing before we cut out today, because I do think that the new Trump administration is at least making an effort. Like they're aware of how bad they look in this realm. And I think that they're making more of an effort this time around to pander to non-white groups. And I think that was pretty clear by what they did here with Black History Month. And it's watching Trump kind of read this copy and pander here is definitely funny. Like there's so much to laugh at with it, but it's also, I think, genuine. Like I don't think that he's anti-black or he's a racist by any stretch. So listen to
Black
some of this.
Americans icons. The garden will predominantly feature incredible women like Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, Billie Holiday, Aretha Franklin, and Coretta Scott King. And I will showcase extraordinary. It will be something very extraordinary. It's going to be producing, we're going to produce some of the most beautiful works of art in the form of a statue from men like Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, Jackie Robinson, what a great athlete that was, Martin Luther King Jr., Muhammad Ali, he's not a bad athlete. What do you think, Muhammad? Not too bad.
Not too
And the
bad.
late Kobe Bryant. People love Kobe Bryant.
Listen to that. So what he's talking about is they're going to build some kind of statue exhibit in the White House garden with a bunch of Black history icons, and Kobe Bryant being one of them. And he had the beginning of this is funny because he's got Tiger Woods there, and he puts Tiger Woods on the mic, and he clearly doesn't want to talk, but the whole thing is the build up to this is funny, but this was actually kind of like the real meat of it. And it's endearing to see him like, oh, Muhammad Ali, he's pretty good, he might be okay if an athlete.
And we're going to save Tiger Woods for another time. That's all. I'm sorry.
So it's kind of funny because he's like, oh, Tiger Woods, maybe you could be in this garden. And then he's like, actually, most of the people that are in this are dead. And so there's this whole kind of, he's kind of roasting Tiger a little bit, like, oh, well, we'll save that for you for later since you're still alive, Just
Black
playing.
History Month, we pay tribute to these heroes and to so many others, but not simply because they're Black heroes, but also because they are truly American heroes who inspire all of us, very much so. The theme of this year's celebration is African Americans and labor, and we want to thank all of the Black workers, construction workers, and every other worker. They do a job like nobody can do, and we want to just thank them very much for their contribution. Tim,
I don't know if you caught that, but he said the theme of this is Black labor. So whoever's handling Trump this time is definitely doing a much better job with this kind of thing.
Contribution you've made, Tim, is incredible. Opportunity Zone, so many people, he's the father of Opportunity Zone. I'm just the son, he's the father, because he came into the White House, the Oval Office, with this idea, and it's probably the #1 economic development project ever in our country, and I want to give Senator Tim Scott the credit for it. Good job, Tim. Of course, millions of Blacks were first brought here in slavery, and they were kept in that evil condition for really generations. But because of the steadfast faith and courage of so many patriots of all colors, we abolished that horrific institution, expanded civil rights, and advanced America's destiny as one nation under God with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, that sounds like the KKK, doesn't it? That sounds real white supremacist. So again, I'm not denying that it's pandering. I'm not denying that it's politics, it's politician pandering to a demographic, but I just really hope that brunch liberals will get out of this mindset that identity politics, white supremacy, this whole, like, Jimmy Dore says it so well. Christian Smalls, the Amazon guy, was able to develop a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multiracial working class movement because he didn't jump in there and go, white supremacy, oh, anti-gay, white supremacy, do. That's how you alienate an entire group of people. And, you know, it's not smart. And the Donald Trump people this cycle realize that. And, you know, I think the old school, the original Donald Trump, the Steve Bannon era, the 2016 era, it's not that I think that they're racist. I just don't think that they really thought much about pandering to those groups in the way that the Democrats always have. And now they realize, oh, hey, those groups came out for us. So we're going to give a little bit back. We're going to pander a little more. We're going to show gratitude. And before we go, let me show you just one more clip that I like to show, because I know it's something that the press is going to consistently ignore. Because I think it was something that Trump said at his inauguration. And this is it right here.
To the Black and Hispanic communities, I want to thank you for the tremendous outpouring of love and trust that you have shown me with your vote. We set records, and I will not forget it. I've heard your voices in the campaign, and I look forward to working with you in the years to come. Today is Martin Luther King Day, and his honor, this will be a great honor, but in his honor, we will strive together to make his dream a reality. We will make his dream come true.
Meanwhile, in the brains of brunch liberals.
Now, I heard a fellow could win some money here, and I know exactly who that is, the church lady. Yes, that is correct, Doug. Thank you. That is the church lady. $400 for you.
But ain't that America? You and me. Ain't that America?
So to some, what is a paradigm? Well, a paradigm is a way of thinking. It's a way of viewing the world. It's a deeply ingrained thing that happens to people. It's a paradigm is a way that you live. It's a way you see the world. The brunch liberal paradigm, the Bruncher paradigm, is that Republicans are racists and white supremacists, and we're going to run on those guys are racists, and that's done. You lost that argument. And look at the Daily Show and Jasmine Crockett today basically arguing against the working class. Look at the Bernie Sanders calling Putin a dictator and advocating for continued neocon war with Ukraine. The dynamics have completely changed. The Democratic Party of today is the fascist dick pig war pig party dressed up in a rainbow cloak. And the Republican Party is imperfect. There are still the Benny Johnsons and the Charlie Kirks, in there. That's part of the coalition, unfortunately. Not the brightest, not the sharpest tools in the shed. But hey, if I got to ally with those people to end wars in Ukraine and, get some accountability for taxpayer money, hey, why not? You know what I mean? I'll fight with them when it comes to anti-gay rhetoric and diversity rhetoric. Fine. Because again, the idea that these people are like racists is blown out of proportion and part of a brunch liberal paradigm that is a dead paradigm. It's the Bernie Sanders of the world are the pro-war people now.
I tried so hard and got so far.
I want to talk to you. Okay.
This is why they were running on joy and stupid,
Let's be honest, it was a terrible night last night. It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go, for healthcare, for our climate, for science, for journalism, for justice, for free speech. It was a terrible night for poor people, for the middle class, for seniors who rely on Social Security, for our allies in Ukraine, for NATO, for the truth and democracy and decency. And it was a terrible night for everyone who voted against him. And guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet.
So, real quick,
and I think that there's the eternal.
This was a reporter from The Atlantic on Bill Maher talking about the Ukraine war before Trump was elected.
Folly that wars are won quickly, which we learned twice that wasn't true recently. And I think that the Russian engagement in Ukraine is going to last for many, 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 many years to come, weakening that state considerably. And it's terrifying. I don't know.
Because we get kickbacks from that, and it's our job my job as a reporter at The Atlantic to make sure that it lasts for many, 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 many years. Stop it, brunch liberals. Stop viewing the world through the lens of a dead political ideology. It's dead. The Democratic Party, I don't know if it's savable at this point, unless they become the party of like the views that Bernie Sanders once espoused and they try to fight to get the populist wing back. I don't know that it's possible, especially when you see the Jasmine Crockett's, the rising stars of the Democratic Party out there saying like, why would we send checks to people? It's not like the economy's bad. I'm doing great. And all the people who voted for Democrats are doing great. That's why we lost. So I want to close out today just with a celebration of the death of one of the brunch liberals' biggest policies of the last 10 years. And that, of course, is the Ukraine war. And this is Max Blumenthal at the UN bringing you the hard facts about the Ukraine war. We're glad that that's over. We're Putin puppets here. Like let's get some Putin talking points on the air right now on the way out the door. Thank you for listening. Smash the like button, smash the follow button, all that good shit. Hit me in the comments. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why I'm right. Tell me why I need to stop wearing sunglasses on my stream. I don't care. Let's interact. Have a great weekend. I may see you this weekend. I may be on again this weekend. I don't know. This is the whenever Dustin feels like it fucking show. So if I'm not on live though, you will get some content clips. So again, thank you for all that you do, for being you, and citizens of the internet. Have a fantastic, fantastic weekend. This is Max Blumenthal playing us out with the hit. There's a lot, some great lines in here about the McMansions around DC and stuff. Anyway, I'll have to come up with a good title for this, but anyway, Max Blumenthal remix, fire. Take care of yourselves.
That I'm describing to you, which sees Washington prioritize unrestrained funding for a proxy war with a nuclear power in a foreign land while our domestic infrastructure falls apart before our eyes, exposes a disturbing dynamic at the heart of the Ukraine conflict. An international Ponzi scheme that enables Western elites to seize hard-earned wealth from the hands of average U.S. citizens and funnel it into the coffers of a foreign government. Indeed, military cemeteries in Ukraine are expanding almost as rapidly as the Northern Virginia McMansions and beachfront estates of executives from Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and assorted Beltway contractors benefiting from the second highest level of military spending since World War II. These are the real winners of the Ukraine proxy war. These are the real winners of the Ukraine proxy war. The Biden administration not only knows that it cannot track the weapons it's shipping to Ukraine, it knows that it is escalating a proxy war against the world's largest nuclear power and daring it to respond in kind. A soldier complained this month to Vice News, "We don't know what Zelensky's plans are, but, quote, it looks like the extermination of its own population, like of the combat-ready and working-age population. That's it." Indeed, military cemeteries in Ukraine are expanding almost as rapidly as the Northern Virginia McMansions and beachfront estates of executives from Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and assorted Beltway contractors benefiting from the second highest level of military spending since World War II. These are the real winners of the Ukraine proxy war. These are the real winners of the Ukraine proxy war. Senator Lindsey Graham has offered a much more grim and more on-the-mark rationale for supplying Ukraine with billions in weapons. As the senator boasted during a recent visit with Zelensky in Kiev, the Russians are dying. It's the best money we've ever spent. And Graham has also said that Americans are ready to fight this war down to the last Ukrainian. So while military-age Ukrainian men are ripped off the streets by military police and sent to the front lines, the financially and politically connected architects of this proxy war are planning to walk through the revolving door to reap unimaginable profits. Military cemeteries in Ukraine are expanding almost as rapidly as the Northern Virginia McMansions and beachfront estates of executives from Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and assorted Beltway contractors benefiting from the second highest level of military spending since World War II. These are the real winners of the Ukraine proxy war. These are the real winners of the Ukraine proxy war, to reap unimaginable profits once their time in the Biden administration is over. For them, a negotiated settlement to this territorial dispute means an end to the cash cow of close to $150 billion in U.S. aid to Ukraine. These are the real winners of the Ukraine proxy war. These are the real winners of the Ukraine proxy war. These are the real winners of the Ukraine proxy war.